So yeah, so let me help get this back on track in terms of schedule. I promise not to go over. More or less, my name is Warren Lucas. I also go by the Goblin Popper or Goblin or really anything else you guys want to call me. If you ever need to reach out or you're ever looking for me, pretty much every platform has me as that handle. So I'm easily found. So simply put, let's just jump right into it. I wanted to talk to you guys today about an initiative and concept that I've been kind of field working and kind of playing with called Microgrid. I've been racking it through my brain for probably about 6 to 7 years now, which saying it out loud is definitely sounds it's definitely it's hard to hear when I say that myself. So really quick is who I am and who am I and how did I actually find BOINC? How did I get into BOINC? Because that kind of sets the stage as to what I'm going to be talking about real shortly. Is effectively I actually specialize right now in working with auditors. So I'm really big into documentation and kind of like digging through a lot of things I don't understand. I love going through science and kind of learning, which makes me very curious and sometimes very dangerous with certain computers that people don't like me going through. So effectively what happened was about like 7 years ago, I joined IBM and they gave me a computer. I plugged the computer in, I would do my work, and then at night, the computer would go to sleep on my desktop, excuse me, on my desk. And I noticed after a few months that my computer was pretty much trying to melt a hole through my desk every night. I don't know why, I couldn't figure it out. As soon as I would wake it up, I would check the processes, nothing was running, and I would sit there going, what the heck is happening? Lo and behold, fast forward a couple weeks later, I was able to catch a stagnant process, and I determined that IBM, when they gave me the laptop, had actually pre-installed BOINC and had pre-installed and pre-configured World Community Grid to run whenever my laptop was plugged in and idle. So that was kind of a surprise. I actually saw this thing called BOINC, and I actually thought it was malware, to be very honest, initially, because it was using all this processing power and I had no idea why, which led me down the rabbit hole to pretty much being here today of digging through, entering the community. My first major project was obviously World Community Grid, because that was the first one I even knew existed. And then I ended up going into the climate change at home. I learned that work units can take 8 days straight with modern hardware, and that was a really fun experience as well. So that's kind of what got me to this point, right? So that begs the question of what is microgrid? What is this thing this guy is talking about, right? And the answer is, simply put, is I came up with this through various conversations, various podcasts that I'd been on throughout the community within BOINC, within Gridcoin, within SEI. I effectively came to the realization that everyone has this idea for how they want to contribute and push science. The average person, the average friend, the average, honestly, the average person on this call, realistically, and the BOINC census have kind of confirmed this, is the average person has an idea for what they want to do. They have math problems. They would say, you know what, really cool theorem. They have proteins that they would say, you know what, I'd really love to try and find out and fold. I have these conjectures. People have ideas and people have things they want to solve, right? So realistically, why would they need to have this centralized project, right? Why would you need something called microgrid? And the answer is, it's the same reason that World Community Grid exists, right? Which is, there is this need for a centralized project, right? We need to centralize and put together a lot of these smaller applications together, right? So if World Community Grid exists, and by the way, just as a side note, I learned a lot about World Community Grid and all the stuff you guys are doing. So that's awesome. And I do want to connect with you after this. So just keep in mind that I wrote this prior to seeing the demo that you guys just gave. So, but if World Community Grid exists, right, then why microgrid? What is the difference, right? And traditionally, whenever we think of World Community Grid, we think of like Zika at home. We think of these massive cancer researches and so on, right? But I think the problem is or the gap is there's very small projects. There's projects that only have 2-3 months worth of processing that it was said very succinctly earlier, which is it takes 2 to 3 months to set an application up, get it tested, get it ready, and then it might run for 2 months, and then they have all the answers, and then they're done. And so setting up a project is very difficult to say, I need to set up a project, I need to get a following, I need to get a user base, I need to get people consistently pulling work units and processing this, but I only need it for like 2 months. right? So the average low end PhD student or community member does not really have that data need of running it for more than just a short period of time. So the idea was effectively set up an overarching project where effectively you tell the end user saying, if you would like to support small time researchers to want to put on their apps here, the apps be community approved, then, just sign up for Microgrid and we can actually give you just like a wide variety of just different applications and different work units from various sources. So again, so why, right? And the answer is because community members, they don't want to be running individualized BOINC projects, and it's probably not great for the ecosystem to have hundreds and hundreds of BOINC projects that people have to kind of select through. The PhD research programs, I've spoken to a number of PhD program candidates who they do their processing. And for anyone who doesn't know this, we actually had one guy in the community who I talked to extensively about what he did. And he goes, I used to have tons of data to process. And what the actual answer was he said, I'd have to put my name on a schedule. And then once I got my name on the schedule, I was given like a week. I would show up to effectively the science lab. I would give some guy my data sets and how to run them, like the Python program or the C++ to run them. They would run in a week. I would get the output. And then I was told in 2 months, I would have another week. And he goes, and if anything was wrong with that data, I had to wait another 2 months. And if any of the professors needed to process something before me, they got priority. So I got pushed back in line, right? So there's students, there's PhD programs that could honestly just use this kind of information, right? Or this kind of resource. Additionally, researchers that don't really have the funding to continue with cloud computing, as everyone can know, it's cheap to start and slowly kind of ranks up. And then the last thing being science and math departments, right? A lot of them have students who just want to try things out, get some papers published initially, even in undergrad. The problem is that barrier to entry, right? So the average person wants to contribute to the scientific process, and we're trying to remove, or at least the goal of Microgrid would be to remove the time and the technical expertise requirements, right? So what is it exactly we're trying to accomplish? Simply put, like, what is the mantra? And the answer is reduce the break-even point, right? So we're trying to significantly improve the actual age-old question of, should I build a BOINC project if I only have some small amount of data to process? Usually the answer goes back and forth, and eventually, usually the person answers no, because unless they want a hobby project, set it up, you're pretty much gonna, I can spend $200, $300 on a mega server in AWS, process it, get most of the way there, and it would cost me a decent chunk of money, but I'm not 6 months down the road and possibly on my way to getting the data. The last thing is stable infrastructure. A lot of people, usually you don't have the triple threat of a C++ developer who can make an application hosting group who knows how to actually properly host BOINC, and the actual researcher who knows the data that's being pumped out of it. So it's very rare you're going to get that triple threat. If anyone knows anyone who's that triple threat, please tell me their email address. I would love to talk to them. But it's being able to create a community around this that says we have a couple of people of every different category. So what are you missing? What do you need help with? And then obviously encourage participation at a wider range of researchers. Again, I've said it a few times already, which is it's really hard for researchers to want to be able to submit their projects if they don't have massive computational need, but they have low budget. So they're kind of sitting in that really weird middle area of, I don't have the money, but I could ask for the money, but I also don't have the data that really needs for like a BOINC project. So what do? I can't really build a following. And then the last thing, and honestly, the thing that's true to my heart and the most important thing to me is it's encouraging the open source of the actual data, of the actual science. In my opinion, anything that's kind of communally driven, communally funded, should be completely open sourced. So anything that's processed, anything that we would say, hey, listen, come to our platform, we can help you process this. We can help reduce the cost of you getting your answers for that PhD research, or your answers for helping find that drug, or the math problem, the conjecture. Any results should be open sourced, right? So providing that information to the community to say, peer review this, assess it, and if you want to say, you know what, I like that, but I want to tweak it and then run like a modified version of the same project, that would be an expectation so you can compare results, right? And then last thing, right, moving right along, is just the initial project and next steps, right? I know for a fact that the initial problem is always you have to make sure that there's work units to process, because nobody likes to go into a subscribe to a project and then they click that refresh button. They say, get more work units. I'm very big on clicking, get more work units. And if it doesn't give me anything, because I'll process like for a month or a couple weeks, and then I'll turn it off for a little bit, depending on the electrical costs of my own home. That's just me. If I click something that says get more work units and it doesn't send me anything in about like 2 hours, usually I go and find another project that's willing to give it to me, right? So keeping work units there is important. So the goal would be to set up an initial couple of math problems that are more conjecture-like, where we can get those reoccurring things. There's plenty out there that are bountied math problems that are still long existing that there aren't any BOINC programs for. Colette's, think Colette's conjecture. But our goal is not to solve Colette's or solve n, n equals np or n doesn't equal np, right? That's not our goal. The goal is to have some work units to make sure that there's always something for someone to reach in and grab. But then looking at some of the older projects fail all the time, usually because of lack of energy or time or money. The applications are out there. The applications are available for people to pick up and run. The goal would be to reach out and say, hey, listen, are you interested in us just running the application? You don't have to be a server admin anymore. You can just focus on the data and the output. So, looking through some of the older projects, seeing if we can pick any of those up, see if we can actually start any of those. And then the last thing, obviously, is inviting new projects. Again, starting a new project means you have to build a fan base. Well, not fan base, but you have to build a following of people who are wanting to process it. So going and building that for them and saying, come here, we already have people willing to process it. They already understand that they're going to get anywhere from math problems to cancer research to science, space and asteroids, like anywhere in between. They accept that. And so you don't have to worry about the person who says, I only want to do biology. We've built up a following that says this is for small-time researchers. They want to help small-time researchers. That's what they're going for. But more importantly is, reducing the initial educational introduction to the platform, right? So I know I spoke a little fast. I'm from the New York area, so I go pretty fast. But yeah, that's really it. And I do just want to add to this, as someone who's been on since noon. Most of it I missed a small portion, but as someone who's been on since noon, I've heard some really amazing things. I love that we're getting to talk about this because, for example, World Community Grid, like Igor, you guys are talking about stuff that I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to partner with you on this, right? Because when IBM was hosting it, it was very big project focus, and some of the stuff that you're talking about now is like this might be some good overlap, right? And so the goal of this is not to create more projects. The goal of this is to help small-time researchers. If that means partnering with other groups in the BOINC community and such, then that's the end result. I'm more interested in the end result being the scientific discoveries and the scientific progression than I am than hosting an actual project, right? So I love hearing, I just wanted to add, I love hearing about all the people who are doing these interesting things. And I love hearing that there is some crossover between what other people are working on, because I'd love to partner with you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean everyone on this call, right? But yeah, so thank you very much for letting me talk about this. This is, again, 6-7 years in the making. So this was kind of a, not to be sappy, but it's kind of like a dream to be able to actually present at a event like this with everyone in a community worldwide that I tell all my friends about, and they're like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, it's this cool thing called BOINC. So so we have a Discord. If you guys want to join it, we have dedicated channels for things like Microgrid, where we're strategizing what we want to do. Right now, we're at very initial phases of talking about how we want to do this, what we want to do with this, who can we do, like who can do what. But this is all volunteer based, right? So if anyone wants to help volunteer, anyone wants to help contribute any way you can, even if it's just outreach or talking to friends, then hit us up, join our Discord, and let us know how you can help or how you'd like to. But with that, I think that was 12 minutes if I clocked it, which all
right. Well, many thanks for the talk and the careful choreography.
Yeah.
Any questions? We have Oliver with a question for Warren, excuse me.
It's fine. I get that all the time.
Yeah, right. Hi, Warren. Thanks for the introduction to your concept. A good idea, I think. I'd be interested to understand how you would compare it to David's BOINC Central concept, let's say, or project.
So I think I missed the initial small part of that. I know that when he was talking about the centralized application, are you talking about the centralization of the library of applications? Or was there a centralized project that you're referring to that I'm?
Yeah, I am. So
Okay.
basically, yeah.
So I think they, unless I'm misunderstanding this, right? I think they're very complementary, because at the end of the day, it's the applications need to be built, right? Anything we would build on this would be effectively open source, right? So if we build an application for, let's say, processing a specific type of conjecture, right, that a PhD student would want to use, I would add that to the repo, right? This is what someone else did for trying to build this specific type of conjecture or this specific type of folding. So I actually heard about that this morning when I was running between a few things, and honestly, what I thought was, that's actually really awesome that exists, because that would be so complementary in my opinion. Because again, anything we would make would have a place to go and live. And then we can also use that. And the more people we would reach out to, we'd say, hey, there's a PhD student, or like, hey, there's a small-time researcher that wants to do X, Y, or Z. We pretty much would already have the data set of the apps we need them to use. We would just tweak it to be like, oh, here's the different data set, but the app really still works. So, and again, and I say this very specifically, is I'm not sure if I missed something about the description that would make this conflict at all, but from what I heard, I thought it was very complementary.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I missed something as well. So I was of the opinion or impression that David's concept of BOINC Central sounded very similar to me, but yeah, I might be wrong there. Maybe David has something to add to this.
Is David still on? Yeah, if David's still on, I would love to hear. But yeah, what I understood, and again, I might be off, but what I understood is that it's not necessarily a centralized project, but a centralized place for applications to be. So I still think there would probably have to be the umbrella project that runs the apps, but that there would be a centralized repo for apps that someone could grab and run if they wanted to. So I think that infrastructure and that central project would still be needed. But again, this is speaking of what I believe I heard and understood. So if I'm getting that wrong, nobody take this recording and quote me, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.